You know, an interesting thing about My Little Pony is that it is absolutely full of background characters. Each background character with its own unique look and special personality, hobbies, and interests. All these background characters are built up to the point where you, the audience, the fans, can make up stories about them and give them interesting personalities, and they're basically blank slates to work with. And no matter how many times the animations or the voices create errors for these characters, they remain interesting, and wow, the fan community has done a phenomenal job creating backstories and personalities for characters who give us little to nothing to work with. On a lot of cartoon shows, the animators won't even bother creating background characters and will keep themselves limited to the very small main cast, or they'll create background characters but they'll all be generic and they'll look alike and they'll sort of blend in. On shows like Hey Arnold, Dud, and Offer, we get all of the characters in the spotlight at one time or another. Even The Simpsons does this to a point, where the entire community is the story, and every background character we get to know very well in canon. But then in shows like Ozymandias, Avatar, The Last Airbender, The Legend of Korra, the background characters are just there. They don't really have anything to do with the story. In shows like Ninja Turtles and Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon, the background characters practically don't exist at all and get just sort of blurred past, or the characters live in such a small environment that there's not a whole lot to add to the background. In shows like Pokemon, we get a bunch of one-off characters that come into an episode and then leave the episode just as easily as they come in, but we don't get a whole lot in the background. But on My Little Pony, the world is just full of background characters, and that's what makes it interesting. But here's the interesting observation about background characters, and that is who we latch onto. It seems that there is a certain number of background characters that the fans will latch onto because they have a unique look, a unique personality, or a unique hobby established in one or just a very small handful of episodes that tells you what that character is. Almost all of the time you can see a pony in only one episode, only for a few seconds of airtime, and you can tell whether or not you love that character and want more of its story, or whether or not you don't care about that character and will let them go within just a very brief appearance. And yet, while characters like Vinyl Scratch and Button Mash are stealing the spotlight with the limited screen time they get, other characters like Flash Sentry and Trenderhoof are coming into the story, having lines and stuff like that in them, and the fandom is complaining about them, complaining about how they come out of nowhere and have no build-up. You know, characters don't need to be introduced and built up in order to come into the world and have us believe they were always somehow there. I mean, Rarity was a major fan of Hoity Toity and Photo Finish and Sapphire Shores without any of those characters having to be built up. They came into Rarity's life. She acted as if she always knew them, even though we were never priorly introduced to these characters. We still accepted that Rarity would have, of course, already known about them. And yet we have a problem when Trenderhoof comes in very much the same way. We also end up having a problem with Flash Sentry and Shining Armor and Cadence and Snips and Snails and a few others when they all come in for their first time out of nowhere with no build-up, and we're expected to just accept them into the pony universe and love them and enjoy them and want them to be in our episodes. And yet at the same time, we also fall in love with Vinyl and Octavia and Lyra and Dr. Hooves and Derpy and Berry Punch and Carrot Top and Button Mash and Soren and so many other ponies, just for having one trait, being in it for a very short time, and having almost nothing else to contribute to the episode. We even fall in love with characters like Photo Finish and Dilda and Trixie, even though they come in for that one episode and do their thing, aren't always necessarily the nicest characters, can maybe even be, morally speaking, worse than Trenderhoof or someone else that we hate. And yet, we love these other characters. And despite all of these other things, there are also a large number of ponies who appear at the same time as characters like Octavia and Vinyl and Lyra and Bonbon, who get just as much background time, who stand next to these characters in the same scenes, who are there in the background just as frequently as the other ponies are, and yet we don't get to know anything about them. The fans don't fall in love with the other ponies in the background the same way they fall in love with some certain ponies in the same background. Like, look at how many ponies are introduced in the Hearts and Hooves Day song that Sweetie Belle sings, and only one of these ponies ends up being a fan favorite who gets his own animation and stories told about him. Look at how many musicians are on stage alongside Octavia, and only Octavia is the one that fans care about. For whatever reasons, certain ponies just get more attention than others. Some get more positive reactions, some get more negative reactions, and some get ignored altogether. And yet they're all background ponies. I wonder what it is that makes some stand out and others don't. Now, that's the discussion for the topic below. So go ahead and post your thoughts. Until next time, thank you for watching, and good